Broad Street Review podcast is an extension of Broad Street Review, Philly's home for arts, culture, and conversation, an online arts and culture journal covering the greater Philadelphia area. I'm your host, Darnell Radford. Today on the podcast, Paper Doll Ensemble talks about the fringe offering, The Wasp's Nest, a sitcom-style presentation of magical beings deciding what to do with a community garden. Here is my interview with Paper Doll Ensemble. Welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Darnell Radford, and today I'm in the virtual studio with the Paper Doll Ensemble, and I will give them a second to introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Sarah Vaness. I am a co-founder of Paper Doll Ensemble, and for the Wasp's Nest, I was a creator and a producer.
Hi, I'm Marcia Ferguson. I was director of the Wasp's Nest and also an ensemble member and deviser.
And I'm Donovan Lockett. I was an actor in The Wasp's Nest and one of the collaborators and devisers as well.
Great, and welcome to Broad Street Review podcast. It's great to have all three of you in the virtual studio. It's a little cramped in here. Ooh, ooh. Does everybody have enough space? So before we get started, tell us a little bit about Paper Doll Ensemble.
So we are a ensemble. We create devised theater. We draw from multiple inspirations in terms of the media that we work in. So we began with sort of more of a dance piece. And really we've grown from there, where we're passionate about devising our pieces all together as a group in a collective format. And we work on things that are stories about women and women's perspectives, and we try to be as inclusive of that as possible. And we've been so lucky, actually, during the pandemic to really expand our collaborator base and get to know talent and people and designers that we may not have been able to work with in quote unquote the regular times. So we have been really working hard in the virtual space to create this current piece in a sort of modified version of our traditional process that we normally do, which is a very research heavy, improv based, and then we cull the piece down out of the mountain of material that we've made into the finalized diamond that you see on stage.
Great. So take us into the Wasp's Nest.
Sure.
Tell us about it.
I can give a brief overview. So we began this process last summer. So that's summer 2020, everyone, where we held a bunch of workshops open to people who were interested in working with us. And that's how we found our collaborators. We began with the topics of women in power, specifically witches, and then women in politics. Those were sort of our inspiration points. And we did a lot of research together as a group. And then we let our conversations lead us down these rabbit holes of where our interests sort of collected. And then we would dig in there. So if we found, we're very interested in herbs, then we would dig into herbs and do a little bit more research and see what sprung out of that for us. From there, from the research, we would create prompts or improv inspiration sentences, if you will. So things that the actors would improvise out of, and then we would record those, transcribe, and see what sort of stuck for us emotionally and what we felt was true to the characters that we're developing, the story that we felt had to be told, and what needed to occur in the piece. So with those nuggets of gold, we would then do further improvs and write those as well, to then continue editing down until we had our finished final piece, which is what you saw. And the format of the show is, we like to call it a sitcom style, because it is a 3-act sitcom structure with these recurring characters interspersed with these commercials. And the commercials were written prompts that the entire group had gone away to write as part of like homework for our rehearsals. And then those pieces that the collaborators shared found their way into being commercials in the piece. And then we really honed in on the 3 main characters for the main story arc. And that's how we ended up with this singular episode that you see for the Wasp's Nest.
I will say, through experiencing the Wasp's Nest, as soon as the commercials popped in, it made me think of the Disney series, the Disney Plus series, WandaVision, and how even though that was all in Wanda's mind, how those commercials were also moving the story forward as well. So I thought those were really fun little escapes that still keep us in the story. Very clever.
Thank you. That was definitely an inspiration for us as well. That came out later in our process, and I think that show, some of us had seen it, sort of crystallized some of the things that we were realizing were occurring for us as a group.
Yeah. So take us into your writer's room, because you said you had to, basically edit and whittle down to get to what we saw. But I imagine that there was so much, left on the cutting room floor, so to speak, that you could probably say, you know what, this is a totally different thing. Let's take this and let's put a pin in that over here, but we're gonna, narrow down on this. But take us in and tell us a little bit more about that process.
I can jump in a little bit here. The 1970s emerged as a design inspiration for us. So you might see even in the color scheme, and the theme song, which is an adaptation of the Brady Bunch television show. The 1970s sort of permeated the final product, and I'm not even sure how that came about, except that it just seemed right as we were improvising and exploring these notions of witchcraft and revolution, and WandaVision. This sort of 1970s TV show from hell seemed like a good container for some of the material that was evolving. And I just wanted to add that actually what we saw and what became the final product was exactly as you say, Darnell. It was it holds worlds within it, because it really was 1 or 2 improvisations that were ultimately sculpted and transcripted. But behind those improvisations were months of work, research, and actually centuries of exploration. Because we started looking at the witch trials in Europe, the witch burnings, medieval witch burnings. There was lots of readings around black and white magic early on, summer 2020. And it all evolved into political realms and slowly became contemporary, but always containing this magical element that is expressed in what's finally turned out to be sort of a silly, fun, nutty indulgence of playfulness. But all the actors involved in the improvisations were so well versed in all of these sort of deeper dramaturgical subjects and topics, I have to say it was a very fascinating project for me, and I learned a lot from being involved in it.
When I think about this, we haven't. We call it virtual theater. We call it Zoom theater. When we're thinking about films versus TV shows, we say big screen versus the little screen. I still don't think, even though we have that terminology, that we've quite put a point on what this is in this space. So how do you what was your mindset as you're crafting this, as devisers who will most likely produce work for the stage, but thinking about we're also going to be on these tiny screens, very focused, and we're not going to have the space to play with that we would normally play with on a stage?
I think we probably all three have a slightly different perspective on that, simply because we inhabited slightly different roles. So I could speak to that as director, but I know Sarah and Donovan occupy sort of different worldviews, points of view on the process. So I'll step aside for now and let that other perspective come to the surface here.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit about it from my perspective. Is it never, for so many reasons, it didn't feel like Zoom theater. And as someone who has been doing a lot of Zoom theater, I don't know, this felt different because we did have the in-person devising. And I think these characters, let me speak for myself personally. I felt like my character, Fiorella, couldn't come alive in the way that she did unless we had that kind of in-person rehearsal process, which happened this most recent summer. So I think when we started devising at the beginning of the summer, like 2020, I personally didn't know what the future of the project was. For me, in many ways, it felt like an escape and just a chance to create art for the sake of creating art, even if I didn't necessarily expect it to turn into a show. I don't know. It was exactly what I needed in the moment. And then, when it became clear that we were going to work towards some kind of sharing show situation, and that part of that would involve an in-person rehearsal process. That was super exciting because I had been doing all of these virtual theater situations. And I just remember that first rehearsal in person that Marcia led. It was my first time performing physically with other actors. And I just remember how special that was, but also really terrifying. I remember feeling very rusty and feeling like, oh, I forgot what physical contact is with another actor. This is weird. But I don't know, just being able to engage our bodies beyond just, our little Zoom head felt super exciting. And again, allowed these characters to just become larger than life and three-dimensional. And I'm really grateful that we were able to have that part of the rehearsal process for sure.
I'm so glad you. Go ahead, Darnell. Sorry.
Oh, I was just saying, Sarah, do you want to chime in?
Yeah, that makes my heart so happy to hear you say that, Donovan. We did a very, let me say, COVID safe. Everybody was vaccinated, in-person outdoor rehearsal. And it was truly a joyous occasion just to be able to have, it was maybe no more than 6 hours spread across like 2 weekends. It was like very brief, but we accomplished so much, I think, because the space that we'd created online in our Zoom rooms were already pretty charged with information, being on the same page about our knowledge of the material, our knowledge of witches, our knowledge of this world that we may not have known what it was, but we were all sort of like heading in the same direction. And then to have people perform together in the same space, I felt like your characters just came alive. And that's something that Paper Doll, we try and pride ourselves on, is very character centric and character led pieces, that these people on stage have incredibly rich lives and specific articulations and mannerisms. And I definitely feel that that was the thing that lit the rest of the piece off, was you all being able to find Fiorella in person, and Pearl and Lucifer, to find Lucifer on stage via Zoom, but to see that develop in person was also truly incredible.
And so we had mentioned these commercials. Tell me how those commercials came together, because they are a load of fun. They're very reminiscent of commercials that we know. That I can't believe how many That's What I Call, music is, how many volumes there are. And hearing those commercials all the time, you're just like,
Yeah.
they just pump these out. This is a top 40 pretty much. But what's it? That's What I Call Satan.
Mm-hmm.
6.
Oh yeah.
So there's 5 more we don't even know about, which makes that even more interesting there. Yeah, talk about the commercials and how they came together.
Well, the phrase "kill your darlings," we got to bring some of our darlings back to life, which was so exciting. They were things that didn't have a place in the show necessarily, but they were things that we couldn't do without. And it was so much fun to be able to craft them. And I feel like they really framed the rest of the show in an appropriate way, where it gives the audience, permission to laugh and permission to feel this is not super self-serious. While yes, we might be discussing ultimately more difficult topics, it's done in a very cheeky way.
Let's talk a little bit more about how these main characters came to be. We have Fiorella here, and talk to us about how Pearl and Lucifer came to be as well.
Oh my goodness, I'm actually having a hard time remembering over all the different sessions. I do remember when we first started, again 2 summers ago. An idea we were exploring was the idea of traditionalism versus liberalism, or progressiveness. And so from that, we ended up kind of leaning towards 2 archetypal witches, one in whom was more conservative, more traditional, and another who was a more new agey progressive witch. And I feel like there have been, over our devising sessions together, there have been so many different incarnations of those witches, and even in terms of who was portraying them. However, those 2 characters, I feel like, ended up appearing months and months and months down the line. And I don't know, maybe one of you can chime in, but I remember somehow it became clear that I would portray the traditional witch, Simha would portray the new age witch, and then Laurel would portray the chaos demon human person.
I remember pretty clearly, because one of my responsibilities was to develop exercises that would help the actors discover their characters. And I gave a lot of thought to that, especially given our research into, we say witchcraft, but really what we were looking at was fluctuations of power and the persecution of witches that happened, and all of the gender-related issues that come along with that. So we ourselves, starting in the summer of 20, actually starting well before that, but we were experiencing as a culture such polarities. We had become such a polarized nation. And I think, if I'm remembering right, Sarah and Donovan, you can correct me, but I think partly our interest in exploring characters sort of on the on opposite ends of that divide was inspired, at least in part, by our attempt to sort of understand where we were as a culture, actually where we are as a culture. And that kind of led to this interest in making that expressed in an actorly way. So I was so blessed to have the actors that I that I was gifted with in Donovan, Laurel, and Simha, who had such a capacity for internalizing all of this stuff without making it too intellectual or too front of the house, and remaining playful and imaginative and developing these characters. And everyone developed some great prompts for improvisations that led to them. And I have to say, I have to echo what Sarah and Donovan were saying about the importance of those in-person sessions that we were lucky enough to have. Brief though they may be, we got to see each other in real time. We got to embody these ideas. The actors experimented, improvised, collaborated across a number of prompts and ideas that were fed by this stream of dramaturgical research that we'd done for quite a long time by that period. And they embodied these cultural, political polarities that we are experiencing and that we had explored in the history of witchcraft through these playful characters. So the Wasp's Nest is so playful, but it really, I mean, if you watch it a few times or really look below the surface, there is so much in there. I mean, the prison industrial complex and sexual relationships, oppressions of various kinds, or organic, biological, the earth, the climate. It's kind of all in there, but these actors just did a remarkable, and everyone in the ensemble did, I think, a pretty remarkable job of bringing them all into this playful space that resulted in what we have as a final product.
Given that you had this time to play before actual dates were in place, you were able to do so much work up front. And now that we have this piece in place, my question was, were you able to stay consistent through the process, or did any of the story change as the world was changing with us?
As I think most devisers will say, anything can change at any moment. So at all times, we were answering the call of what was needed by the piece. So, for example, the spoiler alert, relationship between what are their names? Lucifer, not Laurel. Lucifer and Pearl sort of came out of something that had been sort of floating, like, oh, haha, wouldn't that be funny? They're having a little fling together. And then we sort of realized, no, this has to happen. So that sort of wasn't an 11-hour decision, but it definitely was like maybe a 9 o'clock decision in the piece. And so things like that, we were very open to, especially since it was virtual, we were gifted with a little bit more flexibility than, say, if we were going into, real life production of the piece. So we were absolutely flexible with what the story needed.
I'm a very episodic person, and I don't know if this is because of this long intermission. I think I managed to consume as much television as I do live theater. When we are able to be in spaces in person with each other. But thinking about this piece and the work that you put into it, will there be additional episodes?
I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But we truly had such an enjoyable time creating something that I don't think any of us at the beginning of it would have ever dreamed up that this would be the final product. So I feel so thankful that we had such an adaptable, excited, and passionate team that truly just rolled with every punch. And every time we thought, okay, maybe we could be doing a live production this fall, it sort of presented that that may not be the case. And so really just keeping keeping the faith and sticking with us as we figured out what had to be and what this really could be given the circumstances.
And I think the final shape of it as a TV show, right? A Zoom television show with the commercials, and it ends with "to be continued." So it is suggestive of episodes to come. And I think we're all, I don't know, maybe I should just speak for myself. I've watched so many Netflix television shows now that I am very sort of ready to think about entertainment in segments and episodes. And I mean, if at the very least, the Wasp's Nest plays with that concept and engages it. Whether or not it continues, I don't know, but I think it's interesting to engage with that reality.
Yeah, I think British television does a good job of that. They give us 6 episodes of something, and it's so dense, and it's such a ride that you're like, I can't believe this is over. I can't believe that was only 6 hours. Like,
Yeah.
I can't believe you're not coming back for 2 years. Like, what are you talking about? Why are you all so busy? I think it's always great when you can consume a piece of art and you're just hungry for more. There's so much there, and I love the fact that there is a to be continued, because it's sort of we're like, okay, well, what's next? I don't know. So we are curious, and I feel like you can't have. Of course, the to be continued could just be a device on how to end this instead of saying the end, But you can't have it to be continued without continuing. So I really hope that there are more installments of the Wasp Nest. This was a lot of fun. I thought about it and I was saying, like, 33 minutes. There's no reason why anyone can't, experience this more than once, and tell more people about it, because usually it's about attention spans, especially when it comes to virtual theater. It's like even in a virtual theater, we still, if you're watching it with someone in your space, people are still getting up and going to the kitchen and doing all kinds of things like that. But I like, once we spend some time with characters, we always want to know more about those characters' journeys, and we want to know more backstory. We want to know where they're going next, and so on. Even though this is about a condensed moment, this moment in time that we got to experience. So I guess it's a good thing to want that, even if we don't get it. So
Absolutely, they're also very eccentric, jam-packed characters. So I feel like, it's like drinking from a fire hose with them. Like, it's so much at once.
Yeah. So tell us how our listeners can experience the Wasp Nest.
Absolutely. So you can still purchase your Fringe tickets for our virtual presentation through October 3rd. It will be ending on October 3rd. We do have a chat with the creators via Zoom on Friday, October 2nd at 8 p.m. And we invite anyone to register for that chat. You can watch the show beforehand for 48 hours, anytime between now and then. And we would love to see folks at that creators chat. And if you just want to watch the piece, we are also happy to, receive any notes or thoughts that you have. So we appreciate anyone that's already watched it and enjoyed it.
That's great. Paper Doll Ensemble presents The Wasp's Nest. Sarah, Donovan, Marcia, thank you so much for taking the time to unpack this with us. And I really do hope there are more episodes down the road. Not to rush this one off the stage, but
Thanks,
hope that there
Mel.
are
I
more,
totally
and
agree with you, by the way.
yeah.
I think it would be really fun. A prequel, even, you know?
Ooh, how they
To
all got
find
into
out
that moment. Yes.
how Fiorella became Fiorella. I think
Yeah.
that's
Mhm.
interesting.
That would be awesome. So we will have links to all of that in the show notes and on the website when this goes up. But definitely experience this Paper Doll Ensemble, The Wasp's Nest. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat. This was a pleasure.
Thank you,
so much,
Darnell.
Danielle.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Head on over to our website at www.broadstreetreview.com and click Get Involved at the top. While you're there, help keep us running and click Contribute to find out how. Connect with us on social media, on Facebook and Twitter at Broad Street Review. Thank you for helping to keep the conversation going.